I will continue in Season of the Sandstorms in Chapter 7, Behind the Third Wall. "Let's hurry," said Annie. As Beauty and Cutie walked toward Baghdad, the loose sand of the desert changed to sun-baked earth. Then the hard earth changed to scrubby grass. Goats and sheep grazed in the grass, and farms dotted the countryside. It wasn't long before Jack and Annie came to a red clay path. The path led to a crossroads where many travelers were coming from different directions. They were all heading toward the shining city. Jack and Annie rode alongside boys driving sheep and farmers in donkey carts. They passed women with veils over their faces, carrying pots on their shoulders. Jack kept looking for Mamoon, but he never saw him. Moving with the crowd, Beauty and Cutie clumped across a bridge. Rowboats and barges glided along the yellowish-brown river. On the other side of the river was a huge outdoor market with a maze of tents. The market seemed to be filled with people from many countries. The sharp smell of incense filled the air. Stalls were jammed with burlap sacks, baskets, and carpets. Shoemakers sat cross-legged stitching shoes. Potters were bent over ovens, baking earth-colored pots. Weavers sat at small looms, spinning silk brocade. "Paper? Pearls?" a merchant shouted. "No thanks," said Annie. "Pigeons? Parrots?" Another shouted at Jack. "No thanks," he said. "I love this place," said Annie. "What is it?" "I'll look it up," said Jack. He pulled out their research book and read. In the 9th century, traders from all over the world brought their goods to Baghdad to sell. Baghdad merchants traded paper, fine cloth, and jewelry for goods from Spain, India, Africa, China, Greece, and other lands. These goods were sold in a huge open-air market called a bazaar. "Oh, so a bazaar is sort of like a mall," said Jack. "It's a lot better than a mall," said Annie. "Let's get off and look around." "We don't have time to shop," said Jack. "We have to finish our mission." He pulled out Merlin's letter and read, "Find a horse on a dome, the one who sees all, in the heart of the city, behind the third wall." "It sounds like we passed 3 walls and then we come to a horse," said Jack. "We better keep going." Jack put the book and letter away. Beauty and Cutie ambled through the noisy bazaar. When they left the bazaar, they came to a curved brick wall. Running along the base of the wall was a muddy moat. "Look, that must be the first wall," said Annie. "Cool," said Jack. Jack and Annie rode the 2 camels over an arched bridge that crossed the moat. They passed through a gate with double iron doors. On the other side of the wall was a busy avenue lined with buildings. As their camels wove slowly in and out of the crowd, Jack pulled out their research book. Swaying from side to side, he read to Annie. During its golden age, Baghdad had good hospitals. The city was also known for its excellent police system and public schools, along with its many libraries and stores and a zoo with 100 lions. "I'd like to visit these lions," said Annie. "We don't have time now," said Jack. Their camels clopped down the busy avenue until they came to a green field. "Look, there's the second wall," said Annie. Bordering the field was another wall. It was curved, too, but much taller than the first. It looked like it was at least 100 feet high. There were guards at the gate, but they didn't seem to be checking any of the people passing through. "Act normal," Jack advised Annie. "Don't attract their attention." Jack and Annie joined a stream of people passing through the gate. Beyond the second wall was another grand avenue, and at the end of the wide cobbled road was another green field. "Look, the third wall," said Annie. The third wall was even taller than the second. Again, people were passing freely through its gate. "This part of the mission is easy," said Annie. "Yeah," said Jack, "but we still have to find that horse on the dome and then find the caliph and get him to meet with us." Beauty and Cutie ambled through the gate of the third wall, carrying Jack and Annie into the heart of Baghdad. A palace loomed before them. Its roof was a glittering green dome. At the top of the dome stood the statue of a horse. "Yay, the horse who sees all," said Annie. "I'll bet the caliph lives in that palace. Let's follow those people inside." She pointed to a stream of people entering an arched passageway outside the palace. Jack and Annie rode under the arch and into a beautiful garden. The warm breeze smelled of flowers. They rode down a path bordered by date palms until they came to a courtyard where boys were playing ball. Near the courtyard was a stable with camels in it. "Looks like we'll have to go the rest of the way on foot," said Jack. "Yeah, I guess Beauty and Cutie can stay there," said Annie, pointing to the stable. Jack and Annie rode into the stable. They clucked and the camels knelt. As Jack reached for his shoulder bag, a ball rolled into the stable. Annie picked it up and stepped outside. Jack followed her. "Here!" shouted a young boy with curly black hair. He was holding out his hands. Annie threw the ball to him, and the boy caught it. He grinned at Annie's good throw. "Who are you?" he called. "Where are you from?" Before Jack could say anything, Annie crossed to the boys. Jack hurried after her. I'm Annie, and this is my brother Jack, Annie said. We're from Frog Creek, Pennsylvania. Why have you come to Baghdad? The boy asked. We have to see the caliph, said Annie. The boy and his friends laughed. What's so funny? Said Annie. Our caliph is the most powerful man in the world, said another boy. He does not have time to visit with children. That's what everyone keeps saying, said Annie. But we're here on a very important mission. Annie, Jack interrupted. Come on, I left my bag back in the stable. He waved to the boys. See you guys later. Let's go, Annie. Annie started to leave with Jack. When you discover that the caliph will not meet with you, come back and play with us, called the curly-haired boy. Annie stopped. Don't worry, she called back. He'll meet with us. We're special. Annie, come on, said Jack. Why are you special? Shouted the boy. For one thing, we just saved a precious treasure from bandits and from a sandstorm in the desert, said Annie. For another, Annie, Jack said sternly. He grabbed her arm. Come on. He pulled Annie away. As they headed back into the stable, Jack shook his head. Don't say stuff like that, he said. Why not? Said Annie. Because it's bragging, said Jack. It makes other kids feel bad. Even if you are special, you don't have to. Oh, no, cried Annie. She covered her mouth with her hands. What? Said Jack, following her shocked gaze. Jack's leather bag lay at Beauty's feet. It was open. Beside it was the torn leather cover of Aristotle's books. Wet pages hung in shreds from Beauty's mouth as she happily chewed the precious treasure. Chapter 8. Room of the Tree. No! Cried Jack. Jack ran to Beauty and yanked hunks of paper from her mouth. Annie dropped to her knees and picked up the torn pieces strewn around the camel's big feet. The treasure's ruined, moaned Annie. Jack was stunned. I shouldn't have left my bag here, he said. No, it's all my fault. I shouldn't have gone back and bragged to those kids, wailed Annie. I should have acted more humble, like Merlin said. Annie sounded like she was about to cry. It's okay, said Jack, but he knew it wasn't. The book was destroyed. They'd failed in their mission. Maybe we can fix it, said Annie. Jack shook his head. No, we can't, he said. It's completely destroyed. It can't be fixed. Annie looked up. What did you just say? She said. I said it can't be fixed, said Jack. A big grin crossed Annie's face. Right. It can't be fixed, she said. Help me gather up all these pieces. Why? Said Jack. Had Annie gone nuts? Just do it. Quick, said Annie. Jack and Annie rushed around the stable, gathering up all the torn pages. Now pile everything over here on top of the cover and give me the book, said Annie. What book? Said Jack. The rhyme book, said Annie. Oh, said Jack. Right. He reached into his shoulder bag and pulled out Teddy and Kathleen's book of magic rhymes. Jack opened the book and read down the list. Here it is. Mend what cannot be mended, he said. That's the one, said Annie. Jack flipped through the pages until he came to the rhyme. He held up the book so he and Annie could both see. Standing in a shaft of sunlight, Jack read in a loud, clear voice, Heal what is broken beyond repair. Annie read the second line, Every briol phenomere. The paper bits fluttered. They began to swirl off the floor. They swirled up and around as if they were caught in a small tornado. The tornado captured all the torn pieces in its funnel and twisted them together. The papers swirled into a blur of blinding light. Jack shielded his eyes. He heard a loud woof. Then he looked up. The bright tornado had vanished. Lying on the floor of the stable in front of Jack and Annie was the ancient book. Holding his breath, Jack carefully picked up the treasure. He opened the leathered cover. Oh, man, he whispered. Aristotle's priceless words of wisdom were neatly written on the yellow pages. There was no sign of a rip or tear anywhere. Thank goodness, breathed Annie. Yeah, said Jack. So what do we do now? Said Annie. I don't know, said Jack. What's the next thing Merlin tells us to do? He pulled out Merlin's letter and read, Beneath birds who sing in the room of the tree, greet a friend you once knew, and a new friend to be. What's that mean? Said Jack. Suddenly, Jack heard someone behind them. He and Annie turned around. A girl was standing in the doorway of the stable. She wore a long white gown. Her hair and face were hidden by a veil. Hi, said Annie. Who are you? I am a servant of the palace, the girl whispered. Come. She motioned for them to follow her. "Let's go," said Annie to Jack. "Where is she taking us?" asked Jack. "And why is she whispering?" "I don't know," said Annie, "but I feel like we should follow her." "Okay," said Jack. He put the Book of Wisdom and the Book of Magic Rhymes into his bag. He slung the bag over his shoulder and followed Annie and the servant girl out of the stable. The three of them walked through the courtyard and through the palace doors. They walked down a wide candlelit hallway over a thick woven carpet. At the end of the hallway was a tall, carved door. A boy servant stood by the door. He wore baggy trousers and a long shirt. His face was almost completely hidden by his headcloth. He did not speak or look at them. The servant girl stood close to Jack and Annie. In her strange, whispery voice she said, "In front of the chair, bow to the floor. Do not look up and do not speak until you are spoken to." "But what?" said Jack. "Go quickly," whispered the girl. The boy servant pulled open the heavy door. The girl servant pushed them into the room. "Wait," said Jack, but the boy servant closed the door behind them, leaving Jack and Annie alone. "Jack, look, we're here," said Annie. "The room of the tree." Jack turned around. A giant tree stood in the center of the room. It had silver leaves that fluttered as if blown by the wind. Mechanical golden birds sang tweet, tweet from the silver branches. Beneath the strange tree was an empty black chair. Jewels sparkled in its shiny wood. "We're in the right place," said Annie. She quoted from Merlin's letter. "Beneath birds who sing in the room of the tree, greet a friend you once knew and a new friend to be." "Another mystery solved," Annie said. "Not really," said Jack. "Where are the two friends?" "I don't know, but we better bow in front of the chair like that servant girl told us to," said Annie. Jack and Annie knelt in front of the shiny black chair. They bowed their heads to the floor. Jack gripped his bag with the treasure inside. "Remember what else she said," Annie reminded Jack. "Don't look up and don't speak until we're spoken to." "But there's no one here," said Jack. He felt foolish, bowing in front of a chair and listening to the chirping of mechanical birds. "Why are we doing this?" he wondered. The door opened with a low creaking sound. Jack squeezed his eyes shut. He heard footsteps moving past them. "How did you get into the throne room?" a deep, gruff voice asked. "A servant brought us here," said Annie. "And why have you come?" asked the voice. "We have a priceless treasure to give to the caliph of Baghdad," said Jack, keeping his head down. "It's a book of wisdom." Jack fumbled in his bag and pulled out the book. He kept his eyes tightly shut as he held the book up toward the voice. There was a long silence. "We hope it will help the caliph spread wisdom to the world," said Annie. "How did you come to be in possession of this book?" the man asked. "We were helping a friend," said Annie, "and we got separated in a sandstorm." "Ah, then I suppose you brought this book to Baghdad to gain a reward," said the man. No, we didn't," said Jack. "It was our mission to give it to the caliph." "Surely you must be seeking some payment in exchange for this treasure," said the man. "Would you not like precious perfumes gathered from the sweetest flowers on earth?" "No, thank you," said Annie. "Rubies as large as hen's eggs?" said the man. "No, thanks," said Jack. "You would not accept the book's weight in gold?" said the man. "We don't need a reward, really," said Jack. "Since he likes books so much, why don't you just tell the caliph to use his gold and rubies to buy more of them?" said Annie. Again there was silence. Then the man cleared his throat. When he spoke, his voice was gentle and familiar sounding. "Look up at me, Jack and Annie," he said. Jack opened his eyes. He slowly lifted his head. First he saw gleaming gold slippers, then a long white robe with gold trim, then a familiar face. Jack gasped. He couldn't believe his eyes. The man wasn't a scary person at all. The man was Mamoon.